Hey everybody, it is Friday, I think. Yeah, you can see it's a mess behind me. I just wanted to do a video, so I didn't do no content this week. Thank you for your patience. It's been a wild ride that I will get into more with the patrons. Help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. And I haven't changed this graphic yet. But if you want to do a one-time PayPal donation instead of Patreon because you're mad at Patreon or don't want to sign up for monthly stuff, you can do that via the link in the description box below this video. Okay, so I wanted to do a bit of a year in review since this is the last chance I'm going to get in 2018. And when I thought about it, I'm like, wow, it's been a real mishmash of stuff. Has there been any sort of overarching or underlying theme? And what I came up with, that I think it's sort of a yes, yet they persisted kind of shtick. Wow, I don't have enough light here. I will fix that. But I do think that the gaming industry and the gaming community has persevered despite a lot of headwinds, we shall say. A lot of, I guess we can give benefit of the doubt and say well-meaning but misguided attempts to pull gaming into what is this, year 5 of the ongoing culture war that can basically, if you look at gaming, you can basically see what's going to happen in the sort of larger world, at least North America, if not the world, but it does seem to also be affecting Europe. Gaming seems to be either the first place that gets hit or by complete accident, or where these various groups practice their talking points and their recruitment techniques. And no, that's not going into the tinfoil hat conspiracy theories about certain gaming websites or anything like that. That's just a general thing. I'm talking Twitter, I'm talking Facebook, I'm talking things like that. And gaming is very affected by the platforms that people use to discuss gaming. You know, back in the day when there were message boards set up either by fans or, you know, the individual companies, that wasn't such an issue. It seems that when things pivoted to these third-party social media sites, that things got heavily politicized. And that's not gaming. That's not the fault of gaming, despite many attempts to lay that on gaming. That's just the reality of the cultures of the various social networking sites that gaming is discussed on. And gamers tend to flock to what is perceived to be pro-free speech platforms. Unfortunately, one of the things that we discovered in 2018, I can't say I discovered it. I was sort of aware of it because I've worked in media for so long, but many people discovered, much to their chagrin, that there is really no such thing as a truly free speech platform on the internet, in part because some laws came down the pipe in 2018 and before that have meant that if a company takes a free speech stance, a radical free speech stance, they are likely to be put out of business. I'm talking, of course, about FOSTA. What is it in Europe? Article 13? I don't know if that's passed yet or not, but I know that's got a lot of people very, very concerned. But FOSTA had a nearly immediate and wide-ranging effect on social media. And it's very frustrating because from what I've observed, it actually made it worse for the people that it allegedly protected. That's what these laws written by people who don't really understand technology tend to do. It just damaged the livelihoods of sex workers instead of, making it safer for them to navigate the world, to ply their trade. I don't know what's going to happen with these laws. I don't know if there is the political will to actually improve them or scrap them and change them. The average person doesn't give a hairy damn about sex workers. And so these laws are a great sop to various socially conservative bases. It's a great way to keep those portions of the electorate engaged and mobilized, but they don't actually help anyone except the politicians who are looking for votes. And it definitely created a more censorious internet. I think that these laws are part of the reason that these various social media sites like YouTube, like Patreon, like even Twitter, hello Momo, have been so reactive and so knee-jerk censorious. Let's get Momo up here. Okay, here's the Momo. There we go. I think that's a big part of it. And I think part of the reason that it has been handled so badly is because they haven't had sort of a high-level philosophical approach to issues of free expression versus, advertiser friendliness, et cetera, et cetera. They've just been careening wildly from scandal to scandal, forced compliance, all that stuff. And it doesn't lead to good policy when everything's in a state of reactivity. And I think 2018 was very much the year of the reaction. I like that. I just came up with that. That actually makes something that actually makes a lot of things make sense. People aren't acting, people are reacting. And the recent Patreon scandal is a real example of that. I think it's because I've been in various, corporate swamps for so long. I do see the benefit of corporations set their rules, and corporations have the right to determine what is promoted or published on their platforms. I believe in that just because I don't think that government mandated draconian free speech laws are the way to go. Because it takes too long to change. A business can change their policies much more quickly than a government can. And once these very, very rigid anti-free speech things become law, they're there for a while. And, you sort of see the difference between the ESRB, the video game rating system, which has adapted and changed as needs be, because it's an industry self-regulation practice, as opposed to something that is much more closely tied to government, even though it is on paper an industry self-regulation practice. People have checked me on this quite a few times because they go to like Wikipedia or something like that and see the MPAA, the movie ratings thing, as it's Hollywood policing itself. Yes and no. There was far more government interference in the founding of the MPAA. Video games did not want to go that quasi-state regulated manner. The MPAA makes no sense in the things that they determine are fine for children to be exposed to it at different ages. It's got nothing to do with mental health or developmental stages, and everything to do with political whims and this urge to just keep everybody calm and cool, and the big thing with movies is that there's this belief that theaters will stop kids from going in, and that's kind of shaky in the enforcement, at least up here. I know in the US it's a little different. Our rating system up here is a little bit different. Our rated R is AA, adult accompaniment. A rated R movie up here it's NC-17. Down in the US, it's slightly different. I know it's weird. We're so close, but even that isn't standardized. Whereas the ESRB global, it's all the same thing. I guess PEGI is the, what is that, the European counterpart? But there's a standardization that doesn't exist in movies. And that's what happens when government mucks with things. And there are some things that government should absolutely muck with. Things involving human rights and things involving, anything that takes away a person's freedom in terms of jail or anything like that, denial of privileges, needs to be regulated by the government because that's what government is for. But things like entertainment, the minute the government gets involved, it's a big mess. And I think video games dodged the brunt of that. And I think the output, even though it's the output of 2018 in the gaming industry, despite all the noise, despite the ongoing culture war, despite the stupid gonna stupid, the video game industry managed to put out some really great games this year. There weren't as many as in previous years, and I think that's because of finances. I also think that's just kind of like, the weird Senate map for the 2018 election. I think this was just sort of a weird map in terms of development. A lot of the big studios just had a lull year on a lot of their big franchises, but there were still some absolutely incredible games, like Spider-Man, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I'm hesitant to say this one because of the labor practices, but Red Dead Redemption 2. I think that what came to light about Rockstar's approach to its employees and its labor practices does require some pretty serious, it requires a pretty good look. That's not cool. Unfortunately, some of the great games of this decade have been produced under very similar awful labor practices. EA is another one that got caught that way. That doesn't mean we should turn a blind eye to that. Unlike these silly, I read a thing today that was like, oh, Spider-Man is too friendly with the cops in the Spider-Man game. I'm like, what? I have no problem with Spider-Man existing in a more idealized form of New York. I don't have a problem with that. It's not our New York because Spider-Man isn't swinging through it in our world. It is a happier, more just world, and I am just fine with decent policing being a part of that, but or at least trust in the cops. But labor practices, actual mistreatment of employees in the real world, that is extremely serious, and that is something I've seen more and more game studios take a really serious look at. Rockstar is behind the curve because they're Rockstar. We're starting to see a reckoning of those companies, those publishers and studios that have just been able to skate on some sketchy stuff because their games have been so popular. I mean, Bethesda was another one, the what don't you have phones debacle. People have finally gotten sick of Bethesda spooning out buggy, bloated games that aren't really good and have to be fixed by the mod community. And they started mucking with that. And all of a sudden, people are like, you know what? These games actually aren't really all that good. We make them good. Hello, Scouty. Yeah, we're starting to see a really good correction in that regard. I think that is extremely positive. I think that is an indication of the gaming industry maturing in a way that Hollywood still hasn't. I don't care what people say about Me Too, about Time's Up. I have not seen a fundamental shift in how Hollywood does business. I cannot say that with gaming. I have friends in the industry who, years ago suffered organ failure because the crunches were so bad. Now they're working for companies where I asked them, how was the crunch on your last game? They said almost nothing. We worked to maybe 9 o'clock at night, but that was pretty much it. It was really reasonable. It is getting better. And these stories like, the ongoing mistreatment of employees at Rockstar, things like that, those are part of it getting better. Because the difference between then and now is that people are actually going public with the stories of workplace mistreatment. And I just realized that E.T., he's not giving you the finger. E.T. just has the ouch finger, but it looks kind of, smell my finger. I apologize. I do see really meaningful improvements. I think the next big drama in that is going to be, once again, a showdown with E3, because more and more it's going that companies are like, why are we doing this? This isn't really beneficial. But I think this year, coming soon, maybe not in 2019, but certainly in 2020, although 2019, Sony has said, we're not having a booth. And that's a major amount of real estate. I think things are going to start going more and more direct to consumer. It's going to be less and less trade show. I don't think that's a bad thing. Because, journalists can do, I hate calling myself a journalist because I just sit here and gab at y'all. I'm more of an opinion person or an analyst right now, but analysts can sit there and scrutinize things, while it's streaming. We still have a more aware view of things. And, I don't think that will be a major loss. What is going to have to happen is we're going to have to see the returns of more regional shows or some sort of demo model so that some of us can actually get our hands on some of this stuff. I don't know if it's just going to be, they're going to have downloadable demo codes that we play or something like that if they don't want to do the big shows, because they are expensive. And I get that they have to cut costs where they can, because the increasing cost of making video games is rising faster than the price increases on video games. So they do have to find efficiencies, and I'm totally sympathetic to that. So maybe, just releasing the demo that people can play at home is a way to do it. I think that may also allow smaller sites to have more participation in the market. A major problem in gaming is still the gatekeeping, that 4 or 5 sites, Scout, get the bulk of the access. And that's not a free press. That doesn't create a healthy marketplace of ideas. And that's something I'd like to see fixed sooner rather than later, just because the quality of coverage on those big sites, if it was excellent, I wouldn't be as bothered, though it would bug me sort of in principle still. But the quality of coverage at the big gaming sites is extremely uneven. The quality varies really wildly. The editorial oversight is not focused on actually creating good content. It seems to be more about an ideological fit, and that's not serving anybody. It's not serving the industry. I know the industry complains constantly about the quality of gaming coverage, with cause. I really think they have cause to complain about some of the coverage they've received. It's been completely unfair, but the public is not being served either, because there'll be this huge uproar about a cosmetic bug in a game that happens to look really freaky, but like major balance issues don't get covered the same way. And that's significantly more important to somebody's enjoyment of a game. So the other thing the games press doesn't do is praise games sufficiently when they get it right. They publish a review and hey, 10 out of 10, but then like 3 weeks later, there'll be like a hot take piece on some social issue in the game, and that gets a lot more traffic. It gets a lot more views because people don't tend to read reviews anymore. They tend to watch YouTube stuff, which is part of the reason I shifted over to YouTube when I did. It's like, hey, if this is where the audience is, if this is where the players are, then it makes no sense to continue to puke out content that nobody reads on an outdated medium. But those sites are still important. And I think that a diversity of viewpoints is extremely important. And I don't think we're getting that adequately. Some of the stuff I've seen, there is still some very good writing out there. And I think that is not served by sitting alongside some of the junk that gets published for hate clicks. I think that's gotta stop. I know they're trying to stay alive, but advertisers are eventually going to realize that they don't benefit from having their ads on something that makes people angry. So these are sort of the trends I've been observing and will continue to observe. But like I said, the gaming industry manages to continue to produce quality product. I think overall the quality has been more consistent this year than in past years, which is a great sign because that's been my big complaint about game stuff in the past. They were way too reliant on patches. Like, don't ship broken games, period, end of story. More and more companies seem to have recognized that, which means we might get fewer games in a given year, but that's okay because there's way too much. I know I'm way behind on a bunch of stuff anyway. I think it was actually a good number of releases this year as opposed to like too many going head to head, and too many good games didn't get their due in previous years just because there were too many games and some had much better marketing. And nothing's more disappointing to me than to see a good game poorly marketed. I also think Christmas is not the big deal it once was for gaming releases. We seem to be getting our great games mid-year, like God of War, like The Last of Us. That's going to be a major, Last of Us 2 is going to be a major indicator of where Naughty Dog's at. But the Switch seemed to breathe some fresh energy into things. People still say consoles are dying. Consoles are not dying. People want to plug a game in and have it just work. They don't want to have to worry about components and troubleshooting and all that stuff, getting something working. They want to put it in, download the patch, boom, let me play on my TV. So consoles aren't going anywhere, though the model may shift. I am not as bullish on streaming games as some in the industry are. I think the infrastructure is still too patchwork. Unfortunately, the NTSC system that we use here is not as good for that, for sort of future-proofed as PAL in Europe is, in terms of monitor type. We knew in the 90s that PAL was a much more future-proof system than NTSC, the North American system, was. That has nothing to do with the internet. That's just an aside. But the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure, is still too patchy to really make streaming games viable on a broad scale. Especially with the way data plans are still in Canada. An example of how patchy it is, we moved significantly out of the city. We're not we're still in the Greater Toronto area, but we're not an exurb of Toronto anymore. Toronto for those outside of Canada. But the internet is better in this house than it was in my old house right on the official municipal border of City of Toronto. That's how patchy it is. The companies do not bother updating their services so people can actually get decent internet. And it's not just the pipes. It's not just the, larger transportation methods. It's also inside individual houses. It's a luck of the draw. If you got an installer like we did here, who's like, these lines are all old. I'm going to run a brand new line. Forget all of these. They're junk. And so we're getting true like quad line. We could actually go up a tier and get even faster. But right now I'm like, it's so fast. Because we were supposed to have 50 megabits per second download at our old place. We were lucky if we ever cracked 35 because the infrastructure was so old. Here, it's a legit 50. Not on this machine yet because I need a Wi-Fi booster. But yeah, if you're in the band of the modem, and even here, it's still significantly faster because it's that half of 50. I'm still getting 25. Woohoo. That's how checkerboard it is. That's how messed up it is. And that's my concern about streaming games. It will leave way too many players behind, and we can't afford to do that. Gaming, the wonderful thing about gaming is how egalitarian it is. If you have an internet connection, even if it's not so great, and you can go out and buy the disc, or you can wait a really long time and download, the internet has been a great equalizer in terms of access to content. And I want gaming to stay that way instead of this premium service model that television has taken to, where all the water cooler shows are on premium cable that some people just don't have, they don't access, and so they're sort of left out. Gaming's not like that, and I'm glad for that. I want that to stay. So that's another major thing that they've been talking about. But I really do believe that the gaming industry will continue to persevere. They're going to have some economic headwinds because right now everybody's like, hey, the economy's good. I don't think it's as good as analysts say for a lot of people, but people have more confidence. Now they're talking about, another downturn. The first thing people cut is their leisure thing, their discretionary purchasing, their pin money, as people used to say. And so gaming will have some challenges in that regard, though during the downturn, gaming did pretty well, all things considered. That was one of the big surprises with the PS4. They didn't think it was going to be as successful as it was because of the recession. Boy, were they wrong. So that's sort of my year-end recap / forecast. I will not be doing New Year's Day coverage, so I will resume on the 2nd, on January 2nd, and hopefully I'll be able to keep it going, and this will be cleaner, and ET won't be giving people the finger. All right, guys, here's to a great 2019. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your support, and have a great new year.